All right, round two, or part two, as we're gonna call it. Let me look at my schedule here. I hope you enjoyed the first lecture as much as possible. I know some people like online lectures better, and some people really don't. Personally, as I said, I like to be face to face. I like to see that my audience is paying attention even though you're wearing a mask. I like to be able to see the eye contact. Ideally, I'd like to see your faces too. But there are some advantages here too. As I said before, some people have busy schedules. It's been tough to take a whole week off to do this class. So here we are. This is the second part of our Wednesday lecture. This will be available as soon as I upload it, but this is for July 20th, okay? Part two here. The first part, we were talking about analyzing content. I'm going to talk about research, mostly because I think that's something that's more suitable to an online lecture than in person. It doesn't need to be done in person because it's kind of just, procedures. It's advice and procedures, and we could do research together in class. But when you're preparing for papers, really what your teachers do is they do research with you in class, and they show you, how to find things, and then they say, okay, go home, go to the library, use the internet, talk to an expert, talk to your parents. Meet somebody who's a scientist or somebody who's knowledgeable on the subject, and gather the information together, sort through it, and determine what information would be most useful for you to include in your paper. Okay? So we're going to talk about that right now. Before we talk about the paper, the research itself, though, I came across this a long time ago. This is not new, but I have material. Thankfully, this whiteboard is blocking the hockey equipment and my umbrella and my guitar and all kinds of piles of books and notes. That's the good thing about this whiteboard splitting my office. It's not very clean over there. But I have a lot of stuff that I've used in previous years in classes, and I want to talk about, before I talk about the research thing, I want to talk about the fact that we don't have any international students here, except, I'm an international student, but I'm your international professor. Every student in our class is Korean. So there is a language barrier here, and as I mentioned in part one student was brave enough to ask if they could record, because I have been here a long time, so I try to break up my sentences and speak very clearly, but at the same time, I might be using words you're not familiar with, especially considering this is a graduate school class, and some of the words that we use to describe strategies, techniques, analytical tools, evaluation things. For example, we talked about the rubric yesterday on Saturday. Maybe you hadn't heard the word rubric before, but that's just a fancy word for a system, a categorical system for evaluating something qualitatively. So now you know. So as we go, as I said, I don't mind. My Korean is very poor. A few times I asked you, is kwaje the right word, or is, I can't even remember. Kangli is for schedule, and there's some other, tabs. I remember when I see them, but I can't really remember them when I'm trying to speak. So I understand this is your second language. Part of this class is also improving your language skills and trying to manage what you have. You have to work with what you have. Some of you have better language skills than others, but that doesn't mean your writing skills are better. I've had lots of students who speak English almost like a native speaker, fluently, bilingually, and they've done poorly in their composition class. So keep that in mind. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a runny nose. It just because you speak well, just because it's natural and easy for you, doesn't mean you're a good writer. All Americans are not good writers. Very few are. Writing takes a lot of practice, and some of the best writers in the world in English, their first language is not English, okay? One of the greatest writers of all time is Joseph Conrad. He wrote a book called Heart of Darkness. Just to give you an example. Now, I can't recall exactly. I believe he could speak multiple languages, Polish and Russian and English. He published this in English so we can read it. And it's one of the greatest books ever written. It's a short book too. So it is dark though. It's called The Heart of Darkness. So don't get me wrong. It's not like a happy romantic comedy or anything, but Joseph Conrad. This is not today's topic. As you know, sometimes I jump around a little bit in terms of what we're talking about, but since this is your second language, one of the best things you can do is to read. The more you read, the better you're gonna do. This is number one. This is the number one thing. Read. I asked the class on the first day, how many people like writing? Basically, everybody said no, but, nobody said anything because none of you really enjoy writing, even in Hangul, even in your own language. But whether you like writing or not, writing has a very important purpose. The communication of writing is very important. And in Western culture, we believe that once you've written it down and you've looked at it carefully, it has some permanency, right? Permanency. 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 Sorry, my spelling hasn't been good so far this semester. Permanency means it's going to be there forever, right? That's one of the elements. You write something, and then 500 years later, people, even though you're gone and you're dead, people are still reading about William Shakespeare. He wrote that. But more than that, we use it for contracts and stuff. Once you sign your name, once you read something, once it's in writing, then it's legal, right? So like in terms of, I don't necessarily think it should be that way. That's just the way it is. So if you're, whether you become a teacher, whatever field of education you are in, high school, public school, graduate school, if you're training people in businesses or you're working for the government, it doesn't matter. You have to be careful how you write, okay? And it's stressful. We are gonna do some fun stuff, like I said on Thursday, about writing to make it a little bit more enjoyable. But one of the things that makes writing so stressful is you feel like it's gonna be there forever. So any mistakes you make, people are gonna see forever. You might have noticed when I showed you my own writing, I actually wrote about Korean culture and how there's so much CCTV and everybody's always watching each other in Korea. It was an article I wrote about cultural studies. And in that article, I wrote Hangul. And it wasn't edited, it wasn't fixed, and I actually didn't know I was spelling it wrong. Everybody knows it's Hangul. But I didn't, and you know what? That was written 10 years ago, And when I showed it to you yesterday, I didn't point out the error because I'm embarrassed. Because that's what happens. It's there, it's published, it's done. That typo is never going to go away. But you have to, we're not publishing things, you have to get over that. And one of the ways that you can really improve your facility with language and your understanding how sentences work is to read. Number one thing, read Heart of Darkness in English. Even if it's tough, it's going to make you a smarter person. It's going to make you a better writer. That's what happens. You read good books, then you become a better writer yourself. It kind of like rubs off on you. Now, second, I want you to read. We are reading already. We read about sugar yesterday. The first part, I read you an article about electronic batteries, right? Electronic vehicles and batteries and their effect on the environment. In this class, everybody has different interests. So of course, we talked about sugar, which is a diet thing. We talked about the environment, about batteries, and we're going to talk about other things too. We're going to jump around, but we're going to continue to read. And you want to talk about the value, right? Talk about the value. Was that valuable? Was that informative? Was the essay about sugar being good or bad for you? Was that helpful? Did it inform you? Was it important? You have to be the judge. I think being aware of sugar is a good thing. There were problems with the structure of that essay, but the idea of the essay was good. And the same thing with the battery environmental thing. Was it informative? Did it tell you things you didn't know? I think maybe it did, so that's even better. Did it have good structure? Yes. Was the structure a little bit different than usual? Yeah, but it didn't break any of the major rules. It was more of a stylistic thing. So that was valuable to read. This is the starting point for improving your writing. Unless you want to just sit down at a table and then scribble and then crunch up the paper and throw it over your shoulder and then write something else and scrunch it up and throw it. That's what they do in the movies. That's what they do in dramas. Nobody actually does that, right? A tortured genius who just writes over and over again, like Beethoven trying to make a symphony. Nobody actually does that. What you do is you read hundreds of books and then you sit down and you write and then, you correct it and you look at it. You don't just keep scrunching things up and throwing it over their shoulder. That's just a dramatization. Obviously, things that you think are relevant to your life are good things. I'm talking about teaching. I'm not just talking about your writing, but I'm talking about right now both. Your writing and also how to teach your students, because I'm assuming you might have international students. I hope you do, because it's fun. And learning about different cultures and teaching different types of students with different personalities and different backgrounds is good. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to have, 10 international students from all over the world and 10 Koreans. You have to get used to it. But after you get used to it, it's better, I think. It's more fun for the Koreans. It's more fun for the international students. Everybody gets to exchange their ideas, and I think it ends up being better in the end. So current events are always a popular choice, something that's going on right now. Now, again, what else? Show documents. Show different types of documents. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you samples of emails and essays and resumes and curriculum vitae, and I'm going to show you examples of short stories, and I'm going to show you examples of poems. Show them different things, different types of writing. This will make them interested in not just writing. Also, we're also going to do this week. We're going to talk about songs. Because why not? Songs are written. You can listen to them, but songs also have a written version. Movies, obviously, they're visual, but people say things, and there's a script, there's screenwriting, there's other things like that, literature, etc. So show documents, show different kinds of media, that's good. Focus on the communication. Don't focus on, as I said, don't focus on being perfect. Don't focus on grammar and exactly the right word for the right situation. That just takes too long. It's a waste of time and it doesn't really help you progress. Just try and get your point across by improving your communication skill. 7, work on new vocabulary. When I teach you a new word or you teach your students a new word, try and get them to use it, try and get them to remember it, try and use it in a sentence, try to get a definition, look it up in the dictionary, write it down, whatever you need to do. Say it a few times, try not to forget it, put it into context, make sure you grow your vocabulary. Yes, like I said, context. Some words are very useful in only one context, like marking rubric. You're not going to walk around saying, hey, what kind of marking rubric did you use last semester for your English class? Not a very common conversation. But you know the context. The context is for teaching and studying, but there's going to be other things that you're going to be able to use in multiple contexts. So you need to know not just what the word means in Korean. Once you learn the word and you check it in Korean, I know the word in Korean. That doesn't mean you know how to use the word in context in English. You have to practice using the word in English in order to get the context. Now, comfort zone. This is the thing I was talking about in class. Most Koreans have been trained to sit there and not ask questions and just be passive. Even if you don't understand, even if you want to know something, you don't say anything. You got to break out of that comfort zone. If you really want to improve yourself, do something that you're not comfortable with. I don't mean something dangerous. I just mean put your hand up and ask a question. Even though your teachers in high school told you don't ask questions, don't bother me, or that you're shy, try and make an effort to participate and try an effort to improve yourself and do different things. And this will help you improve your writing as well. Get outside your comfort zone. This doesn't mean stay in your comfort zone. It means get out of your comfort zone, okay? It'll be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's gonna be a benefit for you. Obviously, something that I can help you with, and then you can help your students with once I help you with it, is when we read something in class and you say something, English has strange spelling, the pronunciation is inconsistent, I correct your spelling, it's no problem, it happens to everybody. Like I said, English pronunciation, it's not only hard to say, but it's hard to match. The spelling, it's not very phonetic. So you're gonna have trouble saying the word if you just read it for the first time. So I'm here to tell you this is how you say the word. And when you have students and they say the word wrong, you say, just a minute, the way you say the word is like this. Try again. And they say it, and you're like, very good. Off you go, keep reading. Number 11, basically, don't tell people that they're not good at writing. Don't tell people their language sucks. Don't be negative. Encourage your people. Encourage your students, your colleagues, your classmates. Be positive. Even if you have to give them feedback and you say, maybe that you need to improve this part, right? You don't have to say, this part is terrible, get rid of it. You say, this part, I don't understand it. Maybe if you change it or you take this out or you change the words or maybe it would be better, it would be more clear if it wasn't personal. This is the kind of thing. Give feedback, but constructive feedback, right? Be constructive. Not only to your students, but to each other and your classmates, your colleagues, and your superiors too. Don't tell me that my class sucks and you can't understand because I'm speaking too fast. you have to say it a different way. Just say, Professor Sullivan, I didn't understand some of the things you said today. Is it possible if you could slow down a little bit and could you write some more things on the board, or could you explain this idea because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do? That's easy. Just say it in a nice way and there's no problem. If you say it in a negative way, you're going to get a negative reaction. Finally, whoops. Abstract. Right. We tend to divide things into two sort of types of ideas. Concrete ideas are actual things, physical things, things that you can test, things that you can measure. And abstract things are imaginary things. They're ideas, philosophies, concepts, things that don't have like tangible existence. And you need to be able to distinguish between those things. And you need both of them to be an effective writer, but you should recognize when something's a concrete idea and something that is an abstract idea. So that's a lot of things there. That's 12 things. I hope that I'm not saying I'm not saying it's a checklist or anything. I'm just saying when it comes to teaching students of second language, it works for everybody though. Remember I told you, native speakers are not awesome writers. Just because English is your second language doesn't mean you can't write better than somebody who's born in America or Canada, okay? Trust me, right? Speaking and writing are not the same skill. It takes a lot of effort, and if you focus on things and you're positive and you go through processes and you build your skills, you might end up being a better writer. Quite frankly, I have lots of Japanese friends, and my Japanese friends tend to be weaker at speaking, but their writing skills are very good. And you wouldn't, it's almost like when you read their writing, you think they're cheating because they're speaking, their pronunciation and their grammar and their vocabulary when they're speaking is very, very difficult to follow. But you get them to write a letter, or you get them to write an essay or an article about science, and it's really good. Like, really good. A level. But their speaking level might be a B or lower. And so, that just goes to show, for some people, some cultures, some languages, some education, there's different emphasis. So you gotta have some sort of strategy, all right? Now, when it comes to research, what's the most important thing here? Since this was supposed to be the main part of part 2, but instead I sort of made a EFL, like motivational speech instead. But really, when it comes down to research, there's a lot of information out there. You have so many different options. It's important when you're doing research to be thorough and to be skeptical, right? Don't believe things just because somebody said them or written them. There's all kinds of things that are going on out there right now. There's things called deep fake. There's something called a deep fake right now. We're gonna do this in class. I'm gonna show you some good examples. Artificial intelligence sometimes actually can like put a famous person, whatever it is, Barack Obama, perhaps, right? Or a famous, we'll just say, another type of famous individual, like a singer, okay? Or an actor, like Tom Cruise or something. And they take footage of him and they modify it so that it sounds like he's saying something that he never said. It's called a deep fake. And experts can figure out that this is not a real video and it's not him saying anything. But for most of us, when we're just looking at YouTube, it looks pretty real. So there's a big difference between is a big difference between credible sources and information being circulated, right? In fact, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of, and it's very difficult to determine. There's media, there's journalists, there's blogs, there's books, there's experts, there's amateurs, there's political activists, there's groups, there's terrorists, right? There's spies. They're all over the place. So research, I think, in a way, there's so much information out there. It's almost unlimited in some sense. But you really have to dig. And you can't just use single sources anymore. It's just not good enough. You need credible sources, and you need multiple sources. Okay? Generally, if it's an institution, like an academic institution or a government institution, generally, if it has a long history of integrity, I think is the best word. If it has a long history of integrity, if you got an article from a Harvard journal, or Johns Hopkins University, or Seoul National University, or you've got something that was written by, a book, an essay by Virginia Woolf that's 100 years old, and like it's been verified. It's been spread around. It's been used. It's been verified. But people are misquoting and reproducing and copying. There's all kinds of memes. People say Shakespeare said this and he actually didn't. So the task of researching has become much more difficult. So I think it is actually part of our responsibility now as English education, as English educators, and as writing and reading and culture is part of our discipline, part of our subject, right? We teach English language. We want to improve the skills, right? We want to improve writing and reading and speaking and listening. But we need to educate people to be better citizens, right? We need to educate people to respect each other. We need people to respect information, and we need honesty. We need honesty really badly. If we want to live in a world where we have citizens and we have, excuse me, we have information, almost infinite information out there. We don't want infinite amounts of garbage. So we need to educate the next generation to have some respect for telling the truth, right? We need to have educated people. We need new students growing up and believing that integrity and honesty and dignity and respect are important values in writing, right? And in your behavior, in your teaching. We want that, right? We want that. We want discussion. We want ideas. But we don't want to be misinformed. We don't want to be controlled. And we certainly don't want to cause people damage, hurt. We don't want people to be ruined, their lives to be ruined because of things that we're saying that are incorrect. So deep research, careful deep research in any serious publication, in any serious essay writing, it is essential. When you're teaching your students, if they're young, you have to teach them the same thing. This is what you have to do. Don't go on the internet and find the first Naver blog or whatever it is. I can't think of any. I don't use them very much anymore. But WordPress. Don't find the first little website or Facebook advertisement or podcast or something. Don't find the first one. Listen to it and say, okay, that's what I'm using for my essay. You got to do better than that. The research part should take actually as much or more time than the writing. The more important the writing, the longer the period of research is required. Okay? Well, that sounds really serious to end on right now, but I promise the stuff that we do in class, it will be a little bit more lighthearted, as I promised. Monday, literature, history of writing. We're going to talk about outlines so you can get your essay outline ready. And, Tuesday, we got to talk about the fact checking and the urban myths and all these ideas that spread around, gossip and that kind of stuff, how to use rhetorical devices. Then we have this online lecture on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we get to do creative writing, which is my favorite part. Okay? I have one more section to teach you. I'm not going to do it today because that's probably enough lecturing for one day for me. But there will be part 3, which includes ideas for the classroom, but that one will be quite short. So watch these 2, and the third one, there's no real rush for the third one to be watched. You can watch it on Thursday, but it'll probably be less than 30 minutes. Okay? So thank you again for listening and tuning in. Make sure you get to this by Wednesday so that on Thursday you know what's going on. Okay? Anytime you're ready to watch it, you can watch it as soon as I upload. Have a good Sunday, and if you're watching this on Wednesday, see you on Thursday.